First of all, I would love to introduce our first keynote presenter, Michael Stuber. Michael Stuber, who is owner-manager of European Diversity Research and Consulting company from Germany. And being a passionate European, what we know from his bio, he works a lot with this practical implementation side and practical barriers to diversity in organizations, diversity and inclusion. Please come, Michael. Michael's theme is topic myths, mistakes, or mediocrity. What to avoid on your journey, I hope, towards the diversity and inclusion, and how. Please.
Thank you very much. No, I'm really pleased and honored to be here, and not every speaker says that, but I have a special reason. One is that I was a project manager of the European Union Charter platform for diversity charters that was mentioned a few times here 10 years ago when it was founded, and it's so exciting for me to see that now we have almost all the European Union covered with diversity charters. So it's really for me a longer journey also to have been able to come here on the one side. The other reason why I'm really happy is that, and my congratulations to the organizers of this conference, when I was invited to speak about what was originally called Why Diversity Programs Fail, I thought, wow, you really have the courage. You have the courage to, at the very beginning of your journey, to ask yourself, are there any landmines? Are there any difficult things that we should look at? And that is not, I would say, the standard case today. What do we do today? We go to the internet, we Google, and we just collect good practices, and we see a ton of things that we love, and we think like, oh, this is cool, I'll try this, I like that, and I will just ask my filter bubble what works, and then I will just copy and paste. And so this is how we usually do things today in many areas. And in diversity, and that's going to be one thing I will talk about, in diversity this can be extremely dangerous. So I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to share with you some of the thoughts around what is it that you should pay attention to, and what is it that you maybe can learn from the 20 years that we have been developing diversity in Europe through research and consulting over that time. So, to start with, I have brought 5 main points for you, 5 myths or mistakes that I want you to pay attention to. The first one, and I know I'm being a bit provocative here, the first mistake is focus on difference. But that's what we are here for, no? What a lot of programs in diversity do, they focus a lot on difference in terms of focusing on the other that has not been there. Yeah? So when you do this excessively, when you really do go out and say, okay, so far we have been this culture of, I don't know, X, Y, Z, and as of tomorrow, we will just have those colorful balloons and we will just go on celebrating difference, there is a very big chance that you will step on a lot of people's toes, because not everybody is on your page. Not everybody is prepared for that message. And that's we see a lot, because the maturity of organizations have emerged. So many of the organizations that you see when you look on the web or in the media are at the point where they can celebrate that excessively. But if you are starting, and depending on where you are, maybe you want to be a bit more careful. Now, what is the solution? What is the solution to not overemphasizing difference, not having that risk that maybe you are telling too much, too strongly, too quickly? One of the solutions is to look at the bigger picture of why we are here. And the bigger picture is how we describe the model of diversity and inclusion as a value creation process. because most of you are in a business context, in a corporate context, and that means that most of you want to use diversity and inclusion in a way so that it benefits the organization, that it benefits the company, that it benefits the employees, and eventually society. And the thing that we have learned is that when you give people the full picture and when you explain that there is a sense, a higher sense, a comprehensive sense, and that it's really contributing to what you as an organization want to achieve, the reactions are really different. Yeah? So you are really getting a more understanding, more interest, more curiosity, and eventually more buy-in. So that is one of the solutions to not just saying diversity is great and we have this tagline to say celebrating diversity, but making it a bit more comprehensive, telling people, okay, we are a company that want to grow. In order to grow, it's good to look at segments and aspects that we haven't covered yet because that will help us to grow. Yeah? So it can be sometimes very simple and very straightforward. This is also a solution to overcome the barriers and the restrictions when people are talking about quota or targets, because that's something that we also still want. I mean, we want more diversity, but we don't want to put it as the final aim, because this is what people often don't understand. We want to explain that it's a critical component in a wider journey and development process. And this model shows that the diversity is necessary, but also you need open-mindedness, you need individual open-mindedness, you need open team cultures and open corporate cultures, open societies to create a value. And you need inclusion, you need inclusive processes and inclusive behavior in order to really make it work and beneficial for everyone. And that is the context that changes the perception of diversity a lot and kind of integrates what was usually perceived as a competing storyline of, do we want it as a social or political case, or do we want it only as a business case? And this brings it together. Now, the second mistake is that companies that discover this, they focus on the outcome and they say, yeah, we want the business case. We want this to be our main story is we do this just because we want business. And then they think they are doing the right thing, yeah, because now they are kind of flipping it over to something very hard and very clean and very clear. But again, this can easily fail because you may be overlooking the many barriers and the many biases that are actually there, because we are all humans. And it was said in the morning at a few times that we cannot just move on and say, now, as of tomorrow, we want to do diversity instead of what we've been doing to date, because we are all humans. We are all dealing with those, let's say, biases in ourselves. We don't have a natural gravity to people that are different from ourselves. We don't have a natural tendency to embrace everybody who's different. Every one of us has their limits when it comes to diversity. We need to find out, and we need to find out what the limits of our organizations are in this respect. And only when we are a bit clearer about the biases and the barriers, then we can do meaningful diversity work, because we say, here is the benefit, but here is a barrier that prevents us from going there. Let's work on it. Yeah? So that is how we can also explain the activities and the programs and the measures that we want to deploy as part of our diversity work. And those programs, by the way, this is also the space where we have to address the not so nice aspects of diversity, which can be discrimination, inequalities. There is still a glass ceiling, there is a lavender ceiling, and there are many other ceilings in organizations that we still have to address. And if we do it as a barrier to realize the business case, we have a better chance of looking at them as opposed to if we just do it as a political move. Now, what some companies do in order to work on those barriers is they create very specific programs for certain groups of diversity, as they call it. And then it's usually not a diversity group, but it's a very specific group that used to be marginalized or didn't have the same opportunities. And 20 years ago, I think it was good to have a women's group or a mentoring program for women or a development program for women or for other groups that may have been disadvantaged. If we look at what has happened in the recent past, in the recent 5 years, I would say we have come to the conclusion that we don't promote those programs anymore. We want to make them more inclusive. We want to make sure that women and men are learning together, are developing together. We want to make sure that national majorities and immigrants or migrants or ethnic minorities or whoever may be in the context will come together to create solutions. I want old and young to come together and exchange their strengths and perspectives in order to create something great. And I say this because the specialized programs have actually, in the recent past, contributed to the divisiveness of the discussion. They have contributed to some segregation that wasn't so strong 10 years ago, but with populism and with the bubbles and with all those things, we have seen more drifting apart. And this is where I say, okay, we have to be mindful of our programs and make sure that they are not divisive, but they are bringing people together and they are creating an integrative learning and integrative development altogether. These are just some models that can be used in order to do this, as opposed to creating singular or insular programs. Now, how do you create those programs? I mentioned it before. One of your best sources today is the crowd, the swarm intelligence. You just go out and you ask and you look and you do the research into the best practices, the good practices, and you try to find as much inspiration as possible. And this can be really dangerous, and it's a bit embarrassing to say that at a conference like this, because you all came here to do exactly that. You came here to listen to others and see, like, oh, this is nice, and etc. Now, in diversity, what we've seen in the recent past is that, especially the large multinationals, they have created a kind of a mainstream agenda. And if you look at them, my feeling is, and that's not data, that 60 to 80% of them are doing more or less the same kind of programs. And they come to conferences and they present the program and everybody's completely happy because, they see each other. And it goes like, oh yeah, I like that, we do the same. And so everybody's completely convinced. Now, when we look at the impact of those programs, we have some real question marks. Because many of those programs are there to do the program. Yeah, so they are like they are there to be there. Yeah, so we have awards and we have indices and we have benchmarking initiatives and the conferences and we have all the platforms for anti-racism and LGBT and you all see those platforms. So companies some of them are investing hundreds of thousands of euros per year to make sure they participate in all of that. And then the question is, what do they do internally? I mean, who still has time, who still has resources, and who still has the focus to understand where is the organization, what does the organization need in order to get ahead on the journey? Because you say you are on the journey. And what is a journey in organizational terms? It means change. Yeah. So one of the key things we told our clients in the past couple of years is you have to bring back the change into D&I. You have to be clear that you are running a change program. You are not there to do nice events and nice this and nice that. Your mission is to change, to have an impact on people and the organization. And that you don't do by just asking other people, hey, what do you do? And I'll try that. Oh yeah, there is this nice tool for blind lunches. I love it. I think it's a great idea to have an electronic tool that organizes blind lunches and then people who did not know each other get together. And it can be a great tool, but not each culture is ready for it. And it's not that each culture, it's the right time maybe to do it, yeah? And this is what you need to find out. You need to understand your organization, what it needs to get to the next level or to the next phase. And that is a different task from just browsing around and looking for something that you like or that you think will work or that you want to try. Yeah? So impactful diversity is something different. And that also requires that you challenge some of the myths and some of the beliefs that are perpetuated in many of the conferences and also in many of the media. And here are just a few examples of them. And on our blog, diversitymind.eu, you have more than 1,900 articles, so I'm sure you find your questions answered. As an example, for gender, there is that perpetuating myth that because there was not made enough progress in the past, a fixed quota is the only thing that can work now. Yeah? This is something that everybody repeats at international conferences. I don't know what the situation is in Lithuania, but I hear this a lot. And the data that we have do not support it. Yeah? The data that we have support that there has always been that development. Voluntary development can be faster or not so fast, depending on how you do it. And in many countries, the quota has resulted in a jump of the numbers and then a slow decline. Yeah? So there is no sustainability, and it hasn't had the effect of trickle down that a lot of politicians have also hoped for. So, and in all the other things as well. I mean, for ethnicity, there is the myth that migrants come and they take jobs of other people. Yeah? There is no data to support that whatsoever. On the contrary, there is all the data that I know tells us that if you bring in migrants and they participate in the economy, I always say the cake will grow. Yeah? So there will be more for everyone. And by the way, the welfare of the so-called majority is actually increasing through the input of the migrants. Age and pension, there is the myth that if you send older people earlier to the retirement, they will kind of free up spaces for the young. Again, it's not true. All the data that we know shows us that if you keep older people in employment, the economy is actually doing better, you create more opportunities for everyone, and there is more space for the young as well. So be very critical about some of the things that you may hear in many of the places and check for facts. And the last thing is about, international or not. And I think maybe it's interesting for some of you because here is a mix of Lithuanian companies and local subsidiaries of international ones. There are the two main thoughts about diversity are it's a universal phenomenon and we can apply most of the learning everywhere. And then there is the other extreme that tells us it's a very local thing and you can only do it locally and you have to make sure that you do everything in the local context. Yeah? And okay, the insight that I have for you is it's not very surprising. It's a bit of both. Yeah? So it's a bit of both. There is a certain international mainstream around diversity. There are things like biases that were actually found to be universally applicable. But there is also other stuff where you see differences based on local specifics. And it was just said that, of course, Lithuania has a very particular history, immediate history, and of course that has an impact on the culture and on the business and on everything, on the society. So there is that influence that has to be accounted in addition to the things that are universally applicable. And my advice for you would be make sure that you always check for each of the things that you are working on, what is there on the international level that has actually some intercultural robustness that I can apply, and what is it that I really want to mirror and reanalyze based on the local specifics that we have. So, those were the 5 things that I had for you. Make sure that you see diversity as a value creation process. Make sure you see it as a framework for change. Make sure that you use insights, that you do international contextualization, and yeah, be ready to be innovative. Don't copy and paste what others have been preparing in the past years. Make sure you have the right resources, that you really see, okay, this is work. It's also fun, but it's also work. Focus on the relationship with the people that you work for, including the majorities. And that would mean for me, next year, I want every woman to bring along a man to this conference, right? Based on your on the data. And I'm not meaning your gay friend. I'm meaning, you know, one of your opinion leaders in the conference. And see it as our evolution, yeah? Because again, it's not the revolution only, but it's also not just evolution. We have to do the evolution in a revolutionary way. Okay? Thanks a lot.